Hello everyone, welcome to Anime No Me, and thank you for joining us for another One Piece video. Of the many dreams that we've seen throughout our story of One Piece, from being a brave warrior of the sea, to creating a map of the world, or finding the All Blue, or even becoming the Pirate King, our Vice Captain, Rayleigh Zoro, has been constantly evolving his strength as he goes through all of the different places that the Straw Hats have been, slowly working toward the goal of eventually defeating Mihawk to become the greatest swordsman in the world. During the 2-year time skip, Zoro did spend some time training on Mihawk's island, but now he might need a teacher that's going to be able to help him take his strength and his technique to the next level. And that person would be none other than Silver's Rayleigh, because in the past, he was known to have had incredible Haki ability and greater control than even Mihawk, and he may have even one point surpassed Mihawk as a swordsman, so he'd be able to take all of this knowledge and pass it on to Zoro. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the possibility of Rayleigh training Zoro to make him even stronger in these upcoming final arcs of One Piece, and also why Rayleigh would have an interest in training Zoro in the first place. But before we dive into the video, if you're new to the channel or even if you've watched a bunch of our videos, we'd be absolutely honored if you'd leave us a like and even subscribe and maybe leave us a comment letting us know what you thought of the video. It really helps us out and motivates us to make more content. And if you'd like to help out the channel in a bigger way, consider sharing this video or another one of your favorites with a friend. Without further ado, let's get into the video. Rayleigh is an extremely skilled swordman, and during the events of the Sabati Archipelago, he was able to fight on equal terms against Admiral Kizaru, who himself is a highly skilled swordman wielding his Sword of Light from his Devil Fruit. During this fight, Rayleigh even managed to cut and draw blood from the Admiral's face by combining his armament Haki with his swordplay, showing that he is truly skilled even though he's not necessarily in his prime anymore. But even so, he was still able to create massive air slashing attacks, and was also shown to cut the ground to keep the Marines from chasing after Luffy, being a technique that only the most skilled of swordsmen could ever use. Rayleigh is also one of the few people in the world who can not only use all 3 types of Haki, but he's also a very good teacher, as of course he taught Luffy about each type of Haki while he trained him during the time skip. But even after all that time, Rayleigh was only actually able to teach Luffy the basics, and kind of let him go out to learn the rest on his own. And this means that Rayleigh would be able to teach Zoro how to not only improve his sword style, but also combine his Haki with it. And now that we know and it's confirmed that Zoro has all 3 types of Haki, even though he really hasn't maybe learned how to use his Conqueror's Haki yet, he might be able to take it all the way up to the very next level if Rayleigh were able to train him, because Zoro may not have had as much formal training as the other members of the crew. Through Rayleigh's training, Zoro would be able to learn how to combine all of these techniques perfectly, just like Luffy learned to use it during his training with him, as well as his further training when he was in Udon prison in the conflict of Wano. But Zoro rather has learned it through more, kind of on the fly conventional means. And so giving him the chance to learn through a teacher would be an incredibly good thing and very beneficial to him. And it's not like it would take very much. Zoro is extremely intelligent, and he would be able to learn very quickly, allowing Zoro the chance to analyze Rayleigh's combat style and then adapt it and improve it with his own 3-sword style. Zoro might even be able to add different elements and improve his Ashura technique that so far has been one of his most powerful techniques. It was able to cut Kaido's incredibly tough body, which not many people managed to do in that entire fight on the rooftop in Wano. However, aside from the sword technique training, the most important thing that Rayleigh could teach Zoro would be the Haki training, because even though he's no longer in his prime, he is still an expert about all things Haki. Rayleigh has an immense mastery in the use of Conqueror's Haki, and his skill level is enough to render a very specific target or entire crowds completely unconscious, as we saw when he knocked out Shalria before disabling an entire room of hostiles. Now, although it was said that Rayleigh's Conqueror's Haki was at least twice as powerful as Luffy's at the time of the Fishman Island arc, where of course Rayleigh could have knocked out all 100,000 of the new Fishman pirates, Luffy only overcame half. But let's talk about this Rayleigh thing. He might have just been saying that because Rayleigh still wanted to train Luffy and was still maybe trying to decide if Luffy was the man Roger had been waiting for. So there's really no telling exactly what the limit of Rayleigh's Haki currently is, even though he's kinda up in the years. Apparently Rayleigh's Haki is not necessarily superior to Shanks though, since Rayleigh's specialty is in the use of his sword, while Shanks has always focused on his Haki first. So our red red-haired man has better control over his Haki. But speaking of Shanks for a second, it's not entirely impossible that Shanks could have gotten all of this Haki mastery from Rayleigh himself, because as we know, he was a member of the same crew, and Rayleigh in his prime could have been much stronger than Shanks is today. After all, he was Roger's right-hand man, possessing a power similar or even equal to Roger's, allowing him to face any powerful enemy he wanted in the past. I mean, if we were to hypothesize a fight between Shanks and Rayleigh at their peak, I'd put my money on Rayleigh every time. But if we brought it into the real world, currently, Shanks would of course win because he's the younger man and has demonstrated some pretty crazy control of his own Haki. But getting back to Rayleigh, he's also one of the few people capable of using the advanced application of Haki, able to infuse his body or objects with his Conqueror's Haki to increase his attack power, represented by the thin streams of black lightning that come from his body or his weapon. We've seen this same black lightning from Luffy and finally saw it from Zoro on the rooftop fight in Onigashima. And this was when he had to pull out all the stops and put everything he had into this attack because Luffy and Law were completely exhausted in their initial phases against Kaido. In that amazing and epic scene, Zoro confronted the Yonko head-on and used his most powerful technique, Ashura. And using this technique with this application, Zoro was able to create a wound on Kaido's chest, making the Yonko realize that Zoro also possessed Conqueror's Haki, even though Zoro didn't actually know he had it. However, in his later fight against King, Zoro was much more aware because once he knew he had it, he started kind of honing in on the feelings and started becoming more aware of what this incredible technique actually was. Now, even though he still doesn't exactly know how to control this Haki, it means that with a little bit of training, Zoro will be able to open up a whole new world of attacks and techniques. One other alternative is Luffy might even be able to teach Zoro how to control his Conqueror's Haki. But because Luffy fights with his hands and the power of his devil fruit, this may not be as effective since it's not coming from somebody who's fighting on the same playing field, because Rayleigh is a person who doesn't have a devil fruit and also is a swordsman, and there might be some special kind of techniques or ways that he might be able to use his Haki that a brawler like Luffy just might not think of. Another reason to bring Rayleigh into training Zoro is that Zoro still has something yet to do as a swordsman, and that is of course turn a blade into a black blade, which at least appears to be something that greatly not only increases the value of the sword, but is something that imbues great power. And this might be something that Rayleigh will have some insight on because his armament Haki is amazing, and we've seen him block savage blows with just simply his arm. And the reason why we bring up the idea of a black blade is that Zoro is eventually gonna have to cross swords again with Mihawk. And we also know that Mihawk's sword, Yoru, and a black blade may be the only thing that will be able to defend against a sword like Mihawk's. So before we close out our video today, let's look at some of the things that Rayleigh has done that would demonstrate not only his mastery of Haki, but certain things that he might be able to show to Zoro, or really just reinforce the idea that Rayleigh probably hasn't shown us all the Haki he knows. One advanced application of armament Haki that he showed is when he was able to repel and injure a giant element just pushing out his armament Haki. And we've also seen that he can channel his Haki into opponents or objects and destroy them from the inside out. We saw during Luffy's training in Udon that he thought back to that very moment where Rayleigh destroyed Kami's necklace from the inside out by channeling his Haki, thus freeing her at the slave auction. So we gotta know that Rayleigh is really skilled at using it. It's just Luffy and us, the viewer, weren't ready yet to understand what Rayleigh was fully doing in front of us. And when it comes to observation Haki, Rayleigh has demonstrated that he has an extremely high level, and again, we don't really know the limits yet. We do know though that when he was on the island with Luffy during the time skip, he could sense that there were 500 creatures in Rusakaina that were stronger than Luffy before his training began. And this was how he taught Luffy throughout the time skip to learn how to open up his own observation Haki. And it wasn't just the sheer number that Rayleigh knew. Rayleigh could see exactly every creature on the island, and he could sense the full power of each opponent, something that has never really been addressed more deeper in the story of One Piece. So there might be the possibility that this is some of that advanced observation Haki that we've seen or at least heard of, but hasn't become commonplace in the story yet. Another thing we can't confirm, but are fairly certain of, is the fact that Rayleigh probably could use Future Sight. Now, although he hasn't demonstrated it yet, he does seem to have the ability to be places when he's needed, which it wouldn't take a big stretch to think that that was simply his observation Haki. But at the time he was training Luffy, Luffy might not just have been in the place, so Luffy had to learn it later in his battle against Katakuri. So as you can see, Rayleigh is not only an absolutely wonderful person to have around because of his ability, he's also a great teacher and could impart some knowledge onto Zoro to take all of his knowledge and his technique to the next level. Now, Rayleigh in his day, and still probably now, is nearly impossible to defeat. So through training Zoro won't even just come close to getting near Mihawk, but may easily surpass him and thus become the greatest swordsman in the world. But for now, we'd love to know what you think about it. Do you think that we might see Rayleigh run back into the Straw Hats? I mean, after all, we did see him on Amazon Lily, and he is there to protect Hancock, so it's not outside of the realm of possibility that they're gonna go after Blackbeard and cross paths with Luffy. Second, are there any other places where Rayleigh might have demonstrated some Haki that we missed? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Well, my friends, as we wrap up our video, I'd like to thank you all so much for watching the video, and especially watching the video all the way up to the very end. Be sure you comment on any themes or ideas that you'd like to see in future videos. And also, since you made it this far, give us a like and hit that red subscribe button before you head out to take on the rest of your day. I hope to see you all in our next video, and let's keep sailing this giant sea together. Take care.